Hello everyone. Please, if you can hear me, kindly confirm that you can hear me.
Good evening. I can hear you.
Yeah, I can hear you. Good evening.
I can hear you too. Good evening.
Awesome. Good evening, everyone. You're all welcome to this amazing session. We're looking at something very interesting this evening, which is going to be handled by someone who we consider a master in this space. And thankfully, our guest is already here with us, Mr. Paschal Amah. Now, in this session, we're looking at GitHub for data scientists. I will not do much talking here. I will just leave it for Mr. Paschal himself to do the work. So I'm so excited to have him in the house. Mr. Paschal is, a friend of games. We've had him in, previous sessions in the past, and he's always scratched out of his busy schedule to attend to our sessions. So thank you very much, Mr. Paschal. You're most welcome. Without wasting so much time, I will just quickly introduce Mr. Paschal. Now, Mr. Paschal is a well-known data professional in the data community in Nigeria, and of course on LinkedIn as well. He's well-known in the data community on LinkedIn. So very quickly, I will just introduce him. Now, Mr. Paschal Amah, I hope I got that correctly, is a data engineer at Cobot 360. Is interested in working with the sea of data churned out daily to tease out the insights that are leading therein. So he builds data teams, data pipelines, and data governance by day, and by night he builds RESTful API solutions, delivering their deep DevOps and continuous deployment needs, and as well as coordinating workflows. His main data science areas are exploratory data analysis, EDA, natural language processing, NLP, then ELT plus ETL, which are data engineering pipelines, and it uses Django and Fast API as his preferred web frameworks. Now, Pascal loves the Python programming language, and he doesn't miss an opportunity to teach and co-learn with beginners. He loves to learn, collaborate, read, travel, and listen to music. Now, as short as that is, it's very powerful because Mr. Paschal is a blend of so many skills. He functions well in the data space and can, from what I already know about him, is someone that can conveniently sit in several kinds of data science positions. Now, without wasting so much time, let me invite Mr. Paschal.
Good evening, everybody. Good evening, Zion. Nice to be here.
Yes, good evening. So over to you now.
All right. Good evening, everybody, once again. Let me just turn on my mic a bit. I hope it's not too dark around here. Welcome, everybody. And just like Mr. Zion has said, I would say that I am, how do I put it? So I'm two careers in one. One is on the data side, and secondly is on the backend development / DevOps discipline. By day, you probably find out that I work like as a data person, but by night, which I mean, and in my private time, I'm more of a backend developer and working with a company that we are trying to bring up called Spendwise, a financial management system. All right, so I'm going straight to it. All right, so while, okay, I'm going to share from this other PC. Share my screen. All right, so while the topic says data scientists, I'm going to show you how you can use GitHub, whether you are writing code, whether you're just saving your files. I mean, There are so many uses we can use. We can put GitHub tool. And when we say GitHub, some people get confused the difference between GitHub and Git. We're going to hear all about that today. So GitHub is a version control system. So think about it. You have a file you're working on. Today, you make some edits. The following day, you make some other edits. Let's say you keep working on a daily basis once a day. And on the 10th day, you figure out that, there's a mistake somewhere. And for some reason, you are sure that the edition of the file you worked on the 8th is the correct one. How do you get back to that version of the file? That's one. Number two, often we start a project going by the title of our files, right? You start, I remember those days when we used to do CorelDRAW. You say draft 1, draft 2, and you are hoping that this is going to be your last draft. So you name it final draft, only for somebody to ask for some changes. And then you find yourself saying last draft. And before you know it, some other person has asked for a change, or you yourself, you notice something that is different and needs to be updated. And now you have last draft, and you keep going that way simply because you want to track the state of your file, the one you are using now, the correct one. What version are you working on? It's essentially about version control. So how can you know that this is the version of file I'm working with, and this is the correct one I want to be working with? That's the second aspect. Getting some versions of your files, 1, 2, catching up with names of your file over time. And then to an aspect that is becoming more and more popular today. People collaborate on the same file. In the age post-COVID, although pre-COVID and even during COVID, we've seen programmers and people, and generally people work on the same file over time, the very same file. It's very common in programming. I won't be surprised it's also there in data science, because people also share, become parts of a single project. I remember 2 of the data science projects I took in the past 5 years, so to say. I know I have a team. There was a time I had a team of 12 people. So these 12 people scraped the internet, for example, and we had to assemble it into a single file. There are tons of reasons for working on the same file by a group of people. How can you manage the fact that Mr. A is contributing, Mr. B is contributing, Mr. C is contributing? You want to keep everything together, you want to keep everything sane. You don't want anybody overwriting what the other person has done, and so on and so forth. As data scientists, we are writing codes, right? Either you are using a Jupyter notebook, you are using Spider, you are using one tool or the other. How can you assure yourself that at each point in time, you know what file you're working on, you know the version of file you are working with, and should you want to revert to a particular version of a file while keeping the latest version of it, that you can go to it? Are you able to do that today? If you're not able to do that today, I will show you how you can do it very conveniently. So GitHub is a single tool that helps us with version control. So think about your file. Some of us who have used Dropbox, Google Drive, these tools also have a version of a type of version control they give us, right? But they give us nothing, they give us not very granular and the type of power we need with the versions of our file, like services like GitHub and Bitbucket are going to give us in combination with Git. So having done this little introduction, I will now try to distinguish. We must have heard Git and we must have heard GitHub. Now, GitHub is somewhere to store your files in the cloud. Just see it that way. I'm going to make it as simple as possible, even if I don't use the whole technical jargon that's involved. So think about GitHub as a space in the cloud, just like Dropbox, just like Google Drive, anywhere you can store your files in the cloud. Now, you need a way to interact with these your files, right? If you're using Dropbox, you can download the Dropbox app that helps you push things between your local system and the versions on the cloud. Now, GitHub primarily helps you keep the file somewhere in the cloud. Bitbucket will allow you to do that too. But then what is the link between your files locally and your files in the cloud? This is where Git comes in. Now, don't confuse Git with GitHub. I mean, they sound similar. I don't know whether it's the same developers behind it or the same project that is created on, but Git, G-I-T, is totally different from GitHub. Now, Git is the link between your local system, your local files, and your files in the cloud. You hear me use the word origin, and you hear me use the word remote, right? You will also hear me use the word local. Now, when I say local, I mean your files on your computer. When I say remote/origin, I'm talking of your file in the cloud. So don't confuse them. When I say remote/origin, I'm talking about your file somewhere in GitHub, on GitHub in the cloud, or Bitbucket. But for the sake of making it simple, we are talking about GitHub today. Now, Git is going to help you keep different versions of your file on your computer and then sync them up to GitHub. You can use Git on your local machine totally without having it linked to anything in the cloud, GitHub, Bitbucket, whatever. So you can have different versions of your file on your computer managed with Git without pushing into the cloud. But then when you combine the two of them, you get the robust functionality that you are going to need. Now, I will start by demonstrating to us how we can use Git and GitHub to work on a file, make changes, get our changes from some other places, and so on and so forth. Okay, so let me speak a little bit about some other aspects of GitHub. So GitHub, see GitHub as a tree, right? GitHub uses a lot of descriptions that relate to a tree. I mean, the physical tree that we know, the trees that grow in the woods, in the streets. So GitHub, see GitHub as a single tree. I mean, one stem, one trunk, but there are different branches. Now, you can have a single GitHub repository. So when we say repository, it's just call it a folder of files. Now, a single repository can have different versions of it. These different versions of it, GitHub is going to call them branches. Now, you can have the same folder, more than one version of it. Let's say there's always the main version, what GitHub used to call master, but given the backlash against slavery and slavery-related words, they have changed from master to main. So by default, GitHub is going to give you a main branch. This main branch is mostly what people will use as their production branch. So while this branch is sitting in the middle, there are other branches that you can create, other versions of that same file or folder containing files that you can create where you can test stuff. So you test stuff on a branch called, for example, test. You do your work, and at the end of doing your work, you say, okay, this is fine now. Meanwhile, main has been there. You now push your files from the test up to main so that main and test are going to be the same, right? It might sound very abstract to you if you have not used it before. We are going to do it practically today. So I've introduced some concepts. Git is the guy that helps you link your local files with your files in the cloud. That's Git. GitHub is the cloud space where you keep your files, okay? And other services that can give you the same thing GitHub gives you is a service known as Bitbucket. For example, at work, I use Bitbucket, but on my personal space, I use GitHub. Both of them, I use Git to interact with GitHub or Bitbucket, depending on where I'm looking from. Now, remember, I said we have the origin/remote, okay, which is the version of your file in the cloud, whereas you have local as the guy that is on your computer. Let's just say on your computer. Now, I believe I'm sharing my screen, so I'm going to take us through 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 different things we might want to do with GitHub/Git. First of all, let's say you have your project and you want to move it over to GitHub, right? You now want to get into version control systems where you are I mean, it assures you of the fact that your files are where you want them. You're able to get the different versions of it from different dates in the past, and so on and so forth. So you are no longer compelled to save this folder here. If you have another computer you're working on, you carry that folder and push it to that computer and hoping on some magic that you remember which one is the most up-to-date and so on and so forth. With Git plus GitHub, what you can do is that once you have uploaded your files to GitHub, for example, you find out that you can now work on that folder, on that project from any computer you have internet connection. What you just need to do is to get your Git, pull your files from the cloud and start working. Once you finish, you push it up to the cloud again. And if you go to a different computer, pull it down again. I mean, once you have a computer and internet connection, you are good to go. You're not restricted to your computer. Once you have access and you are sure that it is private to you, you can do that. Now, finally, a GitHub repository, like I've said, is like a tree. So a single user can have several repositories, call it several folders of files, right? I hope I've not forgotten the point I'm trying to make. So, okay, I think I've lost it, but when I remember it, I'm going to come back again. So I'm going to show us how we can start our project and push it into GitHub. If you're using Bitbucket, it's the same type of functionality you are going to get. Now, I'm going to start with a new folder. Let me begin with a brand new folder, which I am going to call new folder. Let me call this games. Let me call it games, right? Now, I have this brand new folder, and I want all the files I have in here to be managed in Git/GitHub. All right. So if you're on your computer and want to follow me, I hope Zion or a member of his team sent you some link to download Git and also create a GitHub account. If you have both of them, you can work with me. If you don't, hopefully, if Zion is recording this, people can still come back and try to work their way through. Now, I have this brand new folder. Let's say I have my files already somewhere, my data science files or any other program I'm working with that I want to put into this system. Now, there are two ways you can do this. Either you try to incorporate a file. Yeah, good. Okay, Zion said it, they're recording, so beautiful. So either you try to push the folder you're working with already into the system, or you create a new system, move your files into it once and for all. Now, from experience, I will advise you, do the latter. Create a new guy and then carry your files into it. If you do it the other way around, which is trying to initialize a Git repository inside a folder you are working up with already, you can run into a lot of roadblocks that will make you feel like Git/GitHub is very hard to use. I mean, there are so many commands, you can get lost very quickly. But if you use the trick that people who have used it for a long time use, I mean, you are assured to come in dry. All right, so I have this brand new folder, and what I'm going to
Sorry,
okay.
Can you recap on that?
Okay, so there are two ways you can get into the Git/GitHub space to version control that you can work with. Let's say, so let me get back to my desktop. I have this folder here. You can see I already have a lot of stuff inside it, right? This is the Django project, for example. One of the things I can do is to try and initialize a GitHub repository in this folder and take this folder with the help of Git onto GitHub, okay? That's one way. This is the way I'm saying might have you run into a number of problems and you might want to give up. Git/GitHub can make you want to give up very fast. But when you get the trick, you can get over it. So this is a folder I can move into Git/GitHub. But I won't do that. What I'm going to do is that I'm going to work with an empty folder, a fresh folder, so that when I'm done taking it to GitHub, manage with Git, I will now copy my files into this place once and for all. Okay? I will even advise cut the file so that at the end of the day, you have just a single version of it. All right. So I have an empty folder here. But what I'm going to do is, so assuming you want to install Git on your local system, because to get this going, you need to download Git for your version of, for your OS version, if it's Windows, check whether it's 32 or 64 bits. We get that version for you. If it is Linux, there's a Linux distribution. If it's iOS or Mac, you also have a Mac version of it. Let me see if I can quickly open. So if you don't have it, this is how you can quickly get Git. You can say Git download. Okay. Once you come here, you can see that's for Mac OS, that's for Windows, and that's for Linux. It's probably going to detect the system you are on and have you download it. So let's say you download this guy. I already have it downloaded. I'm not going to download it again, but I want to show us something as we go on to try to install it. Okay, so you can see Git downloaded here. I can double click this guy to run. Already exists. Do you want to replace it? Okay, no, I don't want to replace it. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to my downloads and get a version that I already downloaded so I can show us how to, I don't know why it's talking about replacing. Okay, that is trying to download another. All right. So there are some stuff I want you to ensure that you check. Okay, remove protection. I have some variables protection systems here. All right, so it's going to ask you to allow the install of Git for Windows. You see something like this, and click on next. On this screen, you want to be very attentive to it. If you don't select any other thing, remember to select this guy, Windows Explorer integration. Make sure you have it checked and you have Git Bash here and Git UI here, right? Once you have these two guys checked, you can keep on installing. What does it bring to you? Something very important. Check out what I will try to do now. So in this empty folder that I created that I call games, if I come here and right click, okay, this is the new Windows 11. I don't know why it's showing stuff. So, but if I say show more, I get these two icons. This is what I get by checking those guys. So this is very, very handy. I mean, it makes Git Bash very accessible to you. Git Bash, if you are conversant with Linux, it's almost the same thing with any Unix system. So I can say Git Bash here, and I get this bash. And if you check, you'll see that I am on desktop/games, okay? Because this is where I right-click and I have Git Bash on. All right, I have an empty folder. The next thing I'm going to do, I said I'm going to take the second part. The first part is try to initialize a folder you're using already and put it into the Git/GitHub system. The second part is to create a totally empty project, finish it up, get it connected with GitHub/Git, and then take your files into it. That is the smoother one and the one that is going to give you less headache. So I'm going to go to my browser. I already have a GitHub account. So if you have installed Git on your computer and you have a GitHub account, you're good to go. GitHub is free. I mean, 100% free, at least for the basic functionalities. Then if you want to have some other advanced functionalities like not making people able to merge into your main branch and stuff like that, then you can pay and get the professional version. So I have the pro version, but it really doesn't matter. Now, okay, so speaking of allowing people to work with you, so one of the things I've said you can do with GitHub is that you have a central branch. GitHub will today call main, and you have other branches which are copies of the main, right? So if you are more than one person working on that project, you guys might want to reserve the main branch. You can rename it to production or stuff so that, I mean, when people see production, they'll know this guy is serious and you don't need to touch it. So you can have the main branch like production branch, and you have two other branches that two other members of the team are using. So the process is, this member of the team is working on this particular folder or file. Once they finish, they push it to the main. Okay, you do what is called a pull request. Once you do it, the main person managing the account will see that, oh, Mr. X, who is a part of the game, who is a part of the project, and is asking that we incorporate it into the main guy, right? So the guy who is managing stuff will look at it, see whether there are errors and so on and so forth. If there's none, you can now merge it and main will become exactly the same as the branch. that the guy was working on. And this is how everybody can contribute to the same repository and work. So I have a blank folder on my local system. I've now gone up to GitHub and I will create a brand new repository. You call it a repository, some people can call it a project, whatever you want to call it. On this left-hand side, you can see for each line you are seeing here, these are different projects I've worked on. And again, yeah, I think I remember what I was trying to say then. So a repository on GitHub can either be private or public. If it's private, only you can have access to it, only you can see it. You and people you invite to collaborate on that repository. If your repository is public, then anybody can reach your repository and see it, okay? So it's your choice. If it's a private project, of course, you are making it private. If it's something public, I mean, you can leave it public. All right. So I come to this plus sign at the top right-hand corner, and I click it with the chevron pointing downwards, and I say new repository. Once I click on this new repository, I have a couple of options that I want to fill out. First of all is the name of the repository. Okay, it must be unique within your own GitHub account. So you can't use the same name twice, but you can use a name that some other person has used, only that it's internal to you, so you can actually do that. Now, let me say games-test. So that's the name I want to call it, games test. Now, you can see it marks a green good sign. That means the name is good to go. Now, the second thing I want to do is I want to make this repository private. Okay, check it out. I'm making it private. I have the option to make it public. So private means only myself can have access to it. It won't be listed in the public repositories that you see when you come onto GitHub. Now, these are the two things you want to do. Forget about the rest of it if you are going to go this route I'm talking about. So choose a name for your repo/project. Choose whether you're going to make it public or whether you're going to make it private. So let me make it private for the sake of this tutorial. Once I've done that, I can go ahead and click on create repository. Okay, this is going to give you a list of instructions of what you need to do so that you can get your files up there in the cloud. Okay, now you want to take this first route. Okay, this is the part I do on GitHub. Now I'm going to get into my system, into my local system, and use Git to now hook up to this project that I've created so that I can now tell GitHub in the cloud via Git, see this my folder, be tracking it for me in the cloud. I'm going to be sending stuff to you and I'm going to be asking for it back. Now that I've done this, I get back to my folder here, my empty folder. I right click and say Git bash here, okay? Once I open this, I have this, my bash. Now, don't worry, there's not a whole lot you're going to do. I know when people see bash, I mean, they get turned off. But I mean, somebody like me, I prefer to work on that space than GUIs. Okay, so I'm going to bring this guy on here so that we can see the instructions. Just type what you have verbatim. Spaces, dots, missing them can be an error that will make things go wrong. So usually when trying to do stuff like this, if you're not very comfortable, I advise you copy them, right? You'll notice that in Git bash, your regular control V is not going to work. So just gingerly right click and paste, okay? Hit enter. Now what's happening here is that you are using a Linux-ish CLI command where you are saying echo this text, okay? It's something like saying, write this text into a document that we are going to call readme.md, okay? This statement just says, type into a new file called readme.md, the string game test, okay? It starts with this because it's a markdown. So .md is a markdown. So this is me explaining what's happening on that code. And if you go back to this empty folder, you find out that you have actually created a README file, right? Okay, don't ask me what README file is for. Well, generally it's for, I mean, put a summary of what this project is about, how you can set it up, if you want to run it locally on your system, and so on and so forth. That's the first line. Now, the second line, you initialize a GitHub repository a Git repository in that empty folder that you only have README now. So go ahead and say Git init. So Git, you will find out that this is, of course, initialized, but with Git, you find out that if there's a word that is a command, if you shorten it and there's no other version of that shortened word, it will actually take it as the full stuff. So if you say Git initialize like Git init, they are going to do the same thing for you. Provided init doesn't mean some other thing. I'm going to show us more examples of stuff like that. So Git init, and I hit enter. This guy initializes a Git repository in our local system. So think about a Git repository as one hidden folder where Git is going to put different folders corresponding to the different branches that you have. Don't worry, Git is very versatile, and I mean, the underground workings can be very marvelous if you start looking into it. So initializing a Git repository means that this folder is now known to Git. This folder and this folder alone. If you go into another folder and try to interact with it like it's a Git repository, and it's not initialized as a Git repository, to tell you is a fatal error that it can't find a Git repository there. So Git init helps us initialize a repository. Now we start doing the job. Remember, we created this file called readme.md. We initialize the GitHub repository here. The next thing we are going to do is we are going to add this file to the repository, okay? By doing this move. I paste it here. So this is adding the file we just created to the repository, okay? To the local repository so that we can work with it. I say git add. So the two commands are git. Of course, all git commands start with the word git. You are saying git, add this file, readme.md, okay? Let me force a mistake, right? It's readme.md, but I'm saying readme.mx. Let's see what could happen. Fatal error, readme.mx did not match any files, okay? So that shows you that, I mean, we're actually trying to do something here. So it can't find this file you're asking it to add. So I'm going to go back and put the correct thing and hit enter. Okay, it has now taken it in. It's telling you that the file will have its original line endings in your working repository, although it replaced some of its, I mean, you see a lot of stuff like this. This is a way for Git to try to manage your file endings and so on and so forth. It totally has it under control, so you don't have to worry. So now that we have added this file to the repository, our local repository, the next thing we are going to do is that we are going to do our first commit. So this is the way Git works. You make changes, you add your changes into a staging area, and when you add the changes to a staging area, you commit it. So commit is like saving it with some memorable line you are going to remember, okay? The commit, the string you put in the commit is what is going to tell you what point of the file you are in. So you could tell yourself that this is the time you did this or that, so that when you are trying to get back to a former version and you are saying, I have 1,000 commits, which one is it? It's the strings, the statements you put in the commit that is going to tell you, okay, that was what was happening around there. So you want to say what was happening around there / what you just did or something like that to save you when it comes to it. At this point, you will not think of it. And true to it, look at the statement that is going with the first commit. It's saying first commit, right? Because this is the very first commit you are going to do in this repository. So I paste this guy here. What's happening is that you call Git, of course. You're telling it that this is a commit, and you are typing a message, okay? And the message is a string, first commit. It mustn't be first commit. It can be anything you want to call it, but I mean, this is the most appropriate thing going by what we are doing. This is our first commit, okay? And it tells you that one file changed and there is one insertion. Git can track a single space, a dot, a comma. I mean, any change, Git tracks it for you. All right. So now that we have created a file, initialize the Git repository. Okay. Yep, go ahead.
have an issue. We're saying git config. We're saying pattern unable to auto detect email address.
I can't quite hear you very well. Maybe do you want to drop a comment on the question or observation in the chat?
Okay, maybe
Your connection is shaky. All right, cool. All right. So we've created a file, initialized a Git repository in the folder, added the file, and done a commit. Remember what I said, a commit is just a memorable line for you to authority unknown. Okay, what are you trying to do that is saying authority unknown? Can you tell us? Okay, so now that we have added this, it is now time. Okay, so this line here, what this line here is doing is it is renaming our main branch. I mean, the branch you used to call master initially. This is you trying to name it, to change that name to main. You can change it to any name you want. This is where you might want to call it prod, for example, production. Okay, I think, let me see what that chat message said. Okay, mine is saying authority unknown. So authority unknown, when you try to do what? That will help me see now.
Identity unknown. Not that was like
Okay,
also
when you,
identity
what
unknown.
command do you give and you see that?
The git commit first commit command.
Oh, okay, let me see. Unable to auto detect email address. Okay. So first of all, make sure it's Git URI. Okay, look here, look at the end of your prompt, see whether you have something there. You cannot commit if you have not added, okay? But usually it will tell you there's nothing to commit. So you must add before you commit. Those are the steps. If you have changes in your files or your folder, you first of all add before you commit. So usually when you get authority issues is at the point you try to tell your Git repository to track it with your origin / remote.
Yeah, I've added before committing. Before I commit to that file, it was after I typed in git commit that brought out those pattern errors.
Okay, have you done, could you successfully do git add?
I did that.
Okay, can you do git status? See what I'm typing, git status. You're working out of an empty folder, right?
Yes, yes. I was following every step you took.
Okay, every step as I was doing it. Do you have this? Were you able to see this on your screen when you created the repository on GitHub?
Yes, it's there. As you were copying, I was copying too. I was just following every step.
Okay. Okay, something must have gone. Okay, so look into your folder. Tell me what you see in the folder you are working out of.
The readme folder.
Is there? Okay. Do you see main at the end of your CLI, at the end of your command line interface here? You see main?
It's masters, I see.
You are seeing master. Okay. You're using an older version of Git, but it's still okay. All right. So you did Git add and you were successful, right? Okay, but when you do Git commit, can you type it yourself? Git space commit -m. You can put and do enter. Let's see what happens. Git Commit double M space minus M and test. Any luck? Okay, let me keep going, hoping Ayodeji. Okay.
It's still the same thing, though. It's saying identity, author identity unknown.
Oh, okay. All right. We are going to fix that. Just hang in there. That means you already have Git set up with another account. That's what we usually do that. I will give you a command where you now establish the identity of the user with Git, okay? Linking it to GitHub. So we are going to get to that. That means Git was in use on that system at a point. All right. Now that I've committed, this command to change the name of the main branch to main, I mean, I don't quite need it, okay, but I've just done that and it keeps it main. Connect it to a version GitHub or Bitbucket. So it happens sometimes, not totally. What I heard you say is asking you. So what we are going to do is that we tell Git email and password as you use on GitHub. Once you do that, it resolves that issue usually. All right. Now that we are here, remember our local system, the folder and files locally about what's happening on GitHub around there so far, right? This last move is where we are going to tell Git to take our file and track, create, how do I put it? So Git, tell GitHub that we have this folder locally, which we want to be tracking on that project repository that we just created. That is what this guy is trying to say. So Git, add this address to origin, okay? Go to this address, which is the new repository we just created, and tell it that we have a local version here that we're working with and we want to be sending files to you and retrieving it. That's just what this line is saying. So when I paste this guy here and execute it, usually, of course, if you're on the command line, if nothing happens, then that means everything is fine. But if there's something wrong, it usually throws an error for you, or it tells you the status of something that is going on. All right. Now that we've done this, we are now set to start pushing things up. Okay. And conveniently, Git has also used the word push for us. So making it very simple for us to remember. So you now say Git push upstream. Okay. So this underscore U, I actually have a little note that, so don't worry, apart from the video recording, I have something that a guide you can also follow, right? So this U is actually a way to tell Git to now start tracking this your remote branch this is your local branch with the remote. So that's the very last command we are going to give here. And you see it take stuff up, so to say, to tell you how much, it's copying this from here to there and so on and so forth. Now that we've done this, we have now successfully created a Git repository in our local system and linked it to GitHub in the cloud, right? It looks like it's a whole lot of journey. At least it looked to me back way back when I started using it. But you just need to do this step once for one project, right? And now that we've done that, before we go and show you what has happened on the GitHub account, notice that you now have a folder here, a hidden folder called .git, okay? This was created by initializing a GitHub folder. When you say Git in it did this for you. You don't want to delete this, of course. I'm just saying it for saying sake, but you don't want to delete that because once you delete it, Git is no longer aware that this guy is a repository. This is where you have different branches, versions of files, and so on and so forth. All right. Now that we have successfully now linked it via Git to GitHub, let's go and see how it's showing us on GitHub. So I just go back to this page, which showed me this instruction, and just hit refresh. So this guy now is a full-fledged GitHub repository. I hear come again, but I will try to recap. I think that's what he said. So when you say Git init, in folder called .git in this folder that you're working out of, okay? To see it, because I mean I love to see my stuff. I like to be in control of what's happening. So I can decide to say so if you have, for example, you can see that hidden items is checked on. If I check this off, you see I can't see it again, right? That's why I said it's a hidden folder. So, but I like to see my stuff fully, know what's happening. All right. So if you're not seeing your own, it's probably because I turned off. If you turn it on, it's turned on. So either way, you can tell it to show your hidden files or not. All right. Now that I've refreshed on my browser, you can see that I have a brand new repository with a file in it, just a single file. MD. Okay. Now let's do the interesting stuff. Let's say we have a file we're working on, or a project we're working on. This is the time. Okay, the last line is giving you an error. Let me see that last line. Can you see what it's saying? Make sure you did this one before, okay? This one is important. This is telling you to map this your local guy to, connect this your local repository to this one online. Then before you do this, so once you, okay, fail to push this, okay, and let me see if I can see that. Fail to push some refs to this guy. What usually happens when he says this? Okay, so let's see where you are. Just do git status. Let's I'm pasting what you see as the result of it. All right. Now into those interesting stuff. Once you are in your on branch master, nothing to commit. Working tree clean. Okay. Okay, so let's try to make your own do some stuff, right? So just keep on there. We're going to add a file and see what yours is going to. Okay, but first of all, also follow me with this. Now, let's say you come into your Git repository, a folder that is initialized, that Git is initialized. The way you are going to know is that if you are using Git Bash, I advise you use Git Bash. It's graphic. It shows you some things that are going on. For example, if you see open and closing bracket at the end of this guy, you probably figure out that you are in a repository and this is the branch you are on. So by default, when you create a new repository, you are put into the main branch, main or master, depending on the Git version you're using. All right. There's no rule saying you must keep the name as main, but at least main is what everybody knows, main/master. You can decide to change it to Git Branch M. And all right, so somebody says their own is master, so it's totally fine. Change that. There's this single line of command you can give it to change it, okay? You just say Git Branch M main, okay? But you probably want to leave it with that master, nothing spoiled, like we will usually say. Now, the Git Bash tells you what's happening. You are in main. If you're an ordinary command line, you won't see this, right? So this is that information. Git moves you need to know about. Git start, say here, is going to show you the difference between the local version of your repository and the origin. Okay, it's going to tell you whether you have new stuff put in since the master, since your origin/remote version. You see what I mean by that. So it's saying that everything is clean, nothing to commit, working through is clean. Now, some other thing you can do is that you can say Git branch. Okay, it tells you all the available branches in that GitHub project, in that GitHub repository. When you hit enter, you can see that we have main, only main. Git branch is going to tell you about the branches in your local system. The other command you can give it is git branch -r. -r says remote. So you're asking it, give me all the branches, local and remote. You can see that you have origin main. So it's telling you that, so -r actually gives you the guys on remote, right? It's showing you that on origin, there is a branch called main. That's what this thing means. On origin, which is on GitHub or Bitbucket, if you're using Bitbucket, there is this, and the name is main. All right. Now, let's say inside this our folder that we put a new file that we are working with. So let's create a new file, a new text file. Let's call it Zion, and let's just put something. This is the first line of my code. Okay, it could have been a Jupyter notebook or whatever it is. I save this guy. Now I go back to my Git bash. All right. So now when I do Git status, okay, notice something interesting that is going to show us. Git status. It's now telling us in red that we have a new file called zion.txt. Okay, what do we want to do with this guy? We want to add this file to the repository. Okay, after we add, so remember the three moves. You add any new file you have, you commit it, and then you push it up. Now, we now have zion.txt. So what I will do, one of the things I will do is I say git add Zion. I start typing Zion and I tap my tab key. It completes it for me. Usually when you create this new guy, you have a folder with a ton of guys inside it. You don't have the luxury of saying add them one by one, right? You really don't have that luxury. What you can do is to add dot. Dot means add everything that is new, okay? Everything that has not been committed before, bring it in so that we can commit it. So it does the same thing as me calling that file. So, maybe you have 10 files you have in there and you really want to push up just it's going to add everything that needs to be added. Now let's look at Git status again and see what's happening. When you say Git status, you see that it now says new file zion.txt and is now in green. That means this file is now ready to move up. So for a friend who said the last command was giving an issue, if you have done Git status and done this one, hopefully this is going to prompt it to get things to move up for you. Right. Now that I've done this, the last step is to push. Add your stuff. Oh, no, sorry. I just added. The next thing is to commit, right? Let me try to push without committing. Git push. Everything up to date. Okay. Well, okay, let me see. That's interesting. All right. So my file is still there, meaning that, it has not moved it yet. It's just saying everything up to date, meaning that from the source, there is nothing new. That's what it's telling you. So now I'm going to do my commit. So git commit -m, meaning you are putting a message, and I put a string, second commit. No rule to saying is first, second, whatever makes you remember the thing that happened around here. Okay, let me make it more pragmatic. The practice you should actually use. So added zion.txt. Okay, all right. So you can see it tells you create mode, and if you looked here, there's some movement here. This Git repo actually tracked what happened and is keeping that state. I can push. It does its magic and pushes it up. Let's go see what's happening on GitHub on the web. So I'm going to refresh this page. Remember before we had only readme. Now when I refresh this guy, I now have zion.txt. And if you open it, I mean, you have, this is the first line of my code. Now, let's say one genius, okay? One self-styled genius is working as part of your team, comes in and puts something. Okay, let's not get to that part yet. So what we are going to do, let's now switch to this little text I have for us. Now, say your friend has a project they are working on, okay? And they invite you to contribute. Remember I told you a GitHub repository can either be public or private. For private repositories, you need to expressly invite people to come and join you, right? Now, should I try to invite one of us here? Anyway, so you can actually do that by going to settings. I have a ton of security things set up. If I try to do this thing, it's going to ask me to put in my two-step authentication and so on. So let me not do that. Let me try to bring one of my repos down locally, okay? I want us to look at this guy. So let's say somebody has invited you to join a Git repository, or maybe they didn't invite you. There's a public repository that you want to pull down to your computer and make use of the files. Speaking of which, I will use as a test my LinkedIn challenges repository. So I'm going to open up my repositories here, and let me search linked ahead. So I open up this guy, and I mean I have a number of folders where I put different challenges I put out and solutions to it. So let's say, and I made it public, of course, so that every person can access it. Let's say you want to get this repository that is on GitHub locally on your computer. This is how you can do that. I will go to an empty folder. Okay, let me see if I outlined it here too, so we can follow it. So if you use it, you are doing the correct thing. Okay, all right. Now, I start by creating a new folder. And do I want to create a new folder here? Okay, let me not create a new folder, okay? There's something you do when you create a new folder and you clone a repo, you notice that that repo is actually a folder, right? So that means to reach it, you open that folder and then open the repo folder, right? So you don't want to do that. Let's do the smarter thing. Now, I'm going to go stop, desktop, and start Git Bash. I'm going to start. Oh, okay. Somebody says it's easier working with VS Code. Okay, I tell you, I really don't work with VS Code and Git/GitHub. I mean, it confuses me. That is the. Even if it does, it's easier for me to work this way. But I mean, VS Code makes it very easy also for you to interact with GitHub, right? And VS Code is my go-to code editor. So I come to my desktop. Meanwhile, while we are at this, I mean, let me show you a quick way of opening a command prompt from a specific site that you want it to. By all means, you can open your command line, and usually it starts you from your user account. You can do cd desktop because you know desktop is in your direct path. You can do cd and go back. If you're not sure what is your direct path, you can say ls is Linux. Dir, I think dir is Windows, exactly. So from this, I know that desktop is in my direct path, right? I do cd desktop and I get into desktop. All right. So, but I mean, if you have a folder that is sitting deep inside, maybe one place or the other, I mean, best way is to go to that folder, go to the address bar, and put in command. Boom, you're here. No need to do cd stuff and stuff. And okay, while we are at it, I mean, if you have Jupyter Notebook set up and it's in your path, you can also type Jupyter Notebook here. You see it's coming up this thing like a madman. It powers up a Jupyter Notebook engine from that very folder. So this is These are some handy shortcuts you can use. Now, what I'm trying to do is that I want to bring down a GitHub repository to my local system and keep working on it. So I come to my desktop. You can see I'm at desktop here. I right click and open Git Bash here. Now, okay, notice that, this empty desktop, there is no open and close bracket. That means there's no GitHub repository in here. Let me show us a difference where Git Bash can be very useful to you. Let me go into somewhere I can show it's a Git repository. So I enter here. This guy is, like my, what do you call it? Treasury. So this is an old, it's a very long time ago. Let me see what it is so I can. Come over to your prompt and say git clone, and you paste the address. Correct if you enter with .git. If it doesn't end with .git, something is off. Okay, and I hit enter. It says cloning into LinkedIn, So what it's doing is now downloading the files, right? Once it's done, check out the name it said it's cloning into. It's cloning into LinkedIn data analytics exercises. This is the name of a new folder you will now see on your desktop, right? If I do ls here, wow, what's up? Okay, if I do ls here, ls, because this is a Unix system, Git Bash is Unix, I can see that I have that guy here now. So what I can do is now to get into it, LinkedIn, and boom, we have master here. Okay, meaning that you have downloaded it with the Git repository and everything. You can now start working inside it like your normal Git repository. So that's one. Let me get back to this and make sure that's what we did exactly. All right. Now, okay, so you can try out the rest of the things I put out here. I've already spoken about this Git Branch R. It tells you all the branches that are on remote, and Git Branch on its own tells you all the branch locally. Now let's get back to the original report that we created, the new one. Now I think the CLI is here. No, this is the last video stuff. All right. Now remember games. Now let's say on this folder you want a playground, right? You want somewhere to play around, do some EDA, do some feature engineering. Test on stuff to see whether it's working before you merge it to your main project. This is how you're going to do it. What you want is, apart from this, your main branch, you want to create another branch you can play on. Okay? Let's say this guy is the guy where you project, right? You don't want to play with this branch. So you want to create another branch. It's the same you, but you want to create another branch where you can play with stuff, push things, do changes. When you are comfortable that it's now working, you can now push into main that is hosted on your production servers, right? Now, this is how we are going to do that. I have a little guide for it too. Okay. So this is how to set up your local to make it track your origin, okay? We can always reach that. I will give to Zion to share to us. Now, we have also done about updating a document, right? Now, get updates from origin/main. We are going to skip to this, and I will show you when you want to do that. Then steps to revert to an earlier version. What we are going to do now is to create a new branch. Where do I have that? Oh, apparently, steps to set up to get updates from Git main. I didn't put the steps for that. Okay, all right. So I think that's what I call steps to join a repository. Okay. So what you want to do is to create a new branch. Okay, I said you want a branch where you can play with stuff, get comfortable that it's okay before you push it into your production branch. So the first step is to, let me make this smaller. Okay. Now, when you say Git branch, so that's the first step I'm doing here. You see all the guys you have. We only have a main, right, locally here. So to create a new one, you're going to say Git branch, and you put the name you want to call the new branch. So what do we call it? Let's call it playground. Oh, that's too long. I don't like it. Let's call it test 0. Okay. Oh, you can see what happens when you give the wrong command. That was git instead of git-ci. So git branch, git branch test. Oh, test 0. All right. It's created, but I'm still on main, right? How do I go into this new guy I created? Let's even know whether we created that successfully. So let's say git branch. You can now see we have main. It's in green with an asterisk, meaning that's where we are. And we have test 0. Okay. Now, I want to go into test 0, and I say git checkout. So checkout is your way of telling you to go into this branch. Git checkout test 0. And check here, tells you that it has switched to test 0, right? Now, this is the state of your folder here. Let's find games. All right, exact same thing as main. Now, let's create another file here. Let's call this Paschal and say inside it a new line of code. Save this guy and close it. Now, what we do is, Git start is always your friend, know what's happening. So there's a new guy here called, so we add everything, okay? We commit with a message saying added Paschal.txt, and I push. Okay. Now let's go to GitHub on the web and see what's happening there. Check out this interesting stuff. Now, if I get here and go to games, games test, I think that's the name I called it. Okay. Check this out. This will tell you all the branches you have. And lo and behold, you only have main. What's happening? View your branches. Maybe there's one, but it's not showing us. But we have only main. We have not told GitHub that we created a new branch. That's exactly what the case is here. So we need to tell GitHub origin/remote that, hey, we have a new branch. Please start tracking it for us. And we have a guide to do that here. So, all right. Now, this is steps to set upstream. Now, you can do Git branch V so that, I mean, if you want to see which branches have upstreams like origin tracking and so on and so forth. Okay, yeah, I think it's very good to do it here. So if you say Git branch VV, this guy is going to tell you of all your local repositories, which ones are getting tracked upstream, right? Which one is GitHub or Bitbucket aware of? So when you hit enter, check out the answer. I hope it's not too small. You can see it says that main has a corresponding main on origin, but test O doesn't have it, right? Right. It shows you some very nice stuff. The very last commit you made is going to give you part of it. So now let's tell GitHub that is origin/remote that will now have a brand new branch here and want to track it for. And the steps to do that are Very simple. You tell it git push origin, git push u origin, and you put the name of that. So let's git push u origin, and name of our branch is test O. Okay, we hit enter. It pushes it up. Let's look at git v, git-vv again. Let's see whether something has changed. Git branch vv. And lo and behold, test O now has an origin version, right? It's now pushed it up. But let's not believe this. Let's go check. Remember, this is showing a list of all the branches we have. So when I refresh this guy, I find out that GitHub now has test O. Okay, so test O is where we can play around, and main is where we want to push things when we are done. Now remember, test O is the branch that has Paschal.txt. Main does not have it. Let me show you this. Now, back on our local system, we are on, okay, and we have Zion and Paschal.txt here. Let's check out into main. Git checkout. Be watching what will happen around this area, right? This is the state of the repository on the branch test O. Git checkout main. Can you see that? Paschal goes away because on branch main, Paschal is not there. But on okay. Now, this is how two persons can work on the same project. Let's say Zion is a web page and Paschal is another web page. So the new web page is not yet in production. Let's say main is the guy being hosted on production. So somebody has now gone through main, checked out what's happening, and they see that it's fine, right? Now, you can do this either of two ways. If it is only me working on this repository, I'm going to do a particular stuff, but if it is me working as a part of a larger group, what I will do is that I'll have to send a pull request simply saying, Mio on my branch test O, I've made the changes I'm required to do, and I'm pushing it to the guy who is managing the repository. Let them go through it. If it's fine, merge it with main. Okay. Let's not do that. Let's take the whole power into our own hands. When I want to merge the two of main and test 0, this is what we're going to do. Inside main on my local system, what I'm going to do is that I'm going to use a command called Git Fetch. Okay, Fetch is going to get all the states of all the branches from the remote /origin, right, on GitHub or Gitbucket. So when I say Git Fetch, I don't think it's going to print out anything for me, but it does something. If you're on another command prompt, the ordinary one to show you things it brought up, okay, or show you that you didn't get anything much. Now, time to bring in what is in test 0 into main. To do that, we use the merge command. So we say git merge, git merge origin /test 0. Okay, I hope this is straightforward enough. We are saying git merge into main origin test 0, right? I could have said merge test 0, which is the local one, but let me say origin test 0. When I hit enter, it tells me what has happened. And if you look at this point, you see that it suddenly has come, Paschal has now come into this guy. So main and origin are now the same. One last step, you want to tell Git online, on GitHub, that we have just done something new. Just push the status now. All right. Now, let's say you find out, this is the last thing we are going to do. We're almost out of time. Let's say you now find out that what this guy did in Paschal is actually wrong. and you want to get rid of Paschal in main, right? So it was a disaster that you brought in Paschal into main. You want to restore the main branch to a former state that it was. This is how you can do it. And you want to pay very close attention to this one. Or things could go wrong and you feel that, you are not able to do that. Now, steps to revert to an earlier version. So let's take it one by one. First of all, give a command called Git Log. It's going to give you a list of different versions of the document you're working on, the repository you're working on. If you check out from here, we have a very short history. So you can see from the very first one, the first commit was, I'm trying to see the commit messages. The 0. Okay, so this is first commit. Okay, this is the very first one. Remember when we said added Zion? Okay, remember when, because we have merged test into our main, you now see this commit that we also did because we are now one together. Now, and we know that where we want to be, so this is the first one, second one, and then we added Paschal. We know that we want to revert to this state when we put in this commit. What you're going to do is, from this Git log, you can have hundreds or thousands of lines, depending on how old that repository is. Take the very first few, so make sure you get up to 7. You can take the whole thing, it doesn't matter, but make sure you get at least 5 to 7. I copy this guy. Okay, so I've gotten it. I will come back to my Git bash and I say Git checkout, and I paste that hash, the beginning parts of the hash. Wow, okay. And I think I've made the mistake I'm saying I shouldn't make. There is a space in what I copied. So I'm going to stop this. Okay, let me see. All right. I hope I didn't mess things up, but I apparently copied more than I should. So let me say Git status and see where things are. I have test and main. What did I? Okay, all right. Let me say Git add, Git status, Git commit. Let me say error of some sort. I actually don't know what I did there. So Git push. So this is me getting everything in order. Now I say Git log, so I can get my hash again. Okay. First commit, this guy. Okay, so there are more things that could show up. All right. Now this is this guy, the second one. I know that the state I want is the state here. So I go and copy this guy. I hope I don't make this mistake. Okay. So I copy and come here and say Git checkout. I paste the first few strings on that hash. Please don't, all right. And look closely. I'm going to put a dot. Okay, a dot at the end of this. Okay. Now, what Git has just done is that it has moved the version of file back to the state it was when it was at the commit with this head, right? So it's at the head where the commit hash is this, meaning if you go back to this folder now, it probably is going to, so see all these guys here, it's going to get rid of them to get to the state we were before. So I think what happened was that my copying brought in some documents I didn't have there before. So I think it's a good thing. Now, and finally, after I've done Git checkout with the hash, Git commit, and I give a message going back to a trusted version, enter. After I've done that, I say Git push. Okay. To tell GitHub, I made some changes. This is the state I want to be in now. Okay. And when I refresh, I think I really messed up some stuff here without knowing it. Refresh this page. Okay. So that's essentially how you get back to a former version of what you were working on and get your branch claim. I mean, I mixed up a number of things. This file should have gone away, but I didn't get them to go away. So I'm going to stop here. You get offered it, you will see it as part of your Windows update. I just wait my turn. So thank you for listening, and I hope you have picked one or two things from here. There's so much more you can also do with Git plus GitHub or Bitbucket, but I mean, this is the very bare introduction of what you can get going and how you can have version control in your system. Zion?
Well, thank you very much for that comprehensive presentation. So, interestingly, in just an hour plus, you've covered a lot. This is a full course on Git and GitHub. Thank you very much for this. So I don't know how much time you can spare. We just have a couple of questions we ask participants to ask their questions, but non-technical questions, just a couple of questions about this whole thing. So if you can spare some time, probably I'll just run through maybe 2 or 3 questions.
All right, that's okay.
Okay. So some of the questions, it turns out that you've actually answered them in the course of your presentation. So I wouldn't be going over those ones. One of them says our version control of company data science projects as a team member, our managers don't seem ready to make the shift. So,
Oh, okay. So, okay, yeah, very, very relevant question. So, usually when you are working solo on a project, you tend to feel, I mean, you don't need version control and stuff, okay? But once a second person comes into the show, I mean, you really want to get serious version control because somebody can make a mistake and you want to revert and so on and so forth. So the way I would suggest you put this to management is, hopefully there has not been a disaster where somebody put something that should be in test or development into production. If you have had that case, I mean, your case is made. The only way to control bad things from happening is to have a production branch where you only have things that are good for production and have other branches where you can test your stuff. That way, you keep a production environment separate from a development environment. I mean, there's no person who is a technical manager you are reporting to that you are going to make this case to that won't immediately understand you. But I mean, if they don't, I don't see how else you can make that case. But once there has been that mistake of somebody putting in test stuff into production, I mean, you already have your case made. Without that, you can only hope that they will understand with you that you need somewhere to play around. When everything is fine, you can now merge it into a production environment.
okay, that's awesome. Thank you very much for that. So I'll just ask this one last one. This one says, how useful is Git and GitHub for automating deployment of machine learning models into production? I think the person asking this is more of a machine learning person and wants to understand, whether Git and GitHub can actually carry out the end-to-end automation of machine learning models in production, automation of the deployment process.
All right. So depending on the system you're using, so let me give a very practical example. Let's say you have a machine on EC2 on AWS running your deployment, right? Let's say it's a Flask application, right? A Flask application that has a model that detects fraud on the fly, for example. And this Flask application has an endpoint where all transactions coming in call that endpoint to figure out whether it should be flagged as fraudulent or not. Now, this is your Flask application. I mean, there are times when you want to change some stuff, upgrade some modules, and so on and so forth. And it is on an Elastic Beanstalk application or a Lightail application on AWS. These things are just, a virtualized machine that AWS offers you. Now, before you let's say you are working with the first version of your model, and you have done some improvement and you want to deploy it again. Now, your first version is sitting on the production servers on AWS, and you have worked on another version of it, which is on another branch, for example. What you are going to do if you have Git/GitHub is that that second branch is going to hold the update you want to make. Now, how do you push it into your main? What you can do is to use the merge I just showed you to move things from your development environment into your main environment, okay, main/production. After you have now moved it, if you are on something like Elastic Beanstalk, you can now be in that branch, which is your production, and use the command eb deploy, and you deploy it to the machine that you want to push it to on AWS. I don't know whether that's a lot of technical jargon, but any person on AWS, then I'm sure you understand what I mean. So Elastic Bean deploy command is a CLI command you can use on your local system to push your code from local to an Elastic Beanstalk environment on AWS. So Git and GitHub will help you such that your separate branch is where you do the new update you want on that Flask application holding your model. Once it's done in the test branch, you check it out into main, and with eb deploy, you push it to Elastic Beanstalk. That's how Git and GitHub can help you on this.
Okay,
So
a lot of technical.
All right.
A lot of technical
But you
details
might
right
be
there.
wondering how you could have done it if it wasn't that way. You will be forced to copy files from one folder to the other before you can now push it to Elastic Beanstalk, for example. So Zion, please help break it down eventually in your group.
No problem. All right, thank you very much. So it's been an interesting session, and time is fast spent, so we'll just call it a day here. So for everyone who attended this session, thank you very much. You'll be getting the recording, and everyone can rewatch the session and implement all that Mr. Paschal has taught tonight. So thank you very much, Mr. Paschal. It was so amazing having you in this session. Hopefully, we'll be seeing more of you, in subsequent sessions. Thank you very much for sparing your time to be with us tonight. We really appreciate it.
All right. Then I will share the file with you. And sorry, Coach Isochukwu, we couldn't look into that author unknown sub, but I will try to put in a way to tell Git that this is your GitHub account so that it will stop giving you that error. Thanks for having me, Zion. And
yes, you're most welcome. Thank you very much. So once I get the file from Mr. Paschal, I'll just would get it across to everyone along with the recording so that you can follow through all the steps and watch the video and start practicing all of this. So of course, one thing about Git and GitHub is familiarity with it is all about how much effort you put into it. So the more you utilize it, the more all the abstract ideas begin to make sense. And we covered a lot tonight, a lot of commands, and it seems everything is coming at once. But gradually, you start getting used to all of this, the more you utilize the tools. All right, everyone, thank you very much. So we're going to stop here for tonight. See you in subsequent sessions. So have a pleasant night, everyone. Thank you very much.